do you work with trauma? Do you welcome people who are holding trauma in their bodies?
Absolutely. This trauma is a big part of my work, so it might be developmental trauma that people have suffered, so that would be neglect, abuse that's happened early on in the developmental years of life. So that can be quite chronic, ongoing, so it's not one big thing that's happened, it's just daily difficulties. A lot of people come with difficulties with relational issues between family, partners, so that fits into the sort of relational trauma that might have occurred growing up. There is also acute trauma, where something, a one-off event has happened to someone and they're feeling traumatized by it. That would be something else that I would work with. And in a way, people don't necessarily need to know what has happened to them to come to see me, but part of that process is really getting to know oneself, and it's almost like taking an adult self back into a younger state, and sometimes realizing, oh, that thing that happened was traumatic for me. And in a way, what we're doing is we're marrying up that experience that's been sitting there waiting to be met and allowing the person to feel the feelings that couldn't be felt at the time. So it can be a very subtle process, but there's a sort of a rewiring that can occur through going and meeting these things that, they might not have necessarily been what we would think of as traumatic, but trauma is really anything that somebody has experienced as traumatic. So, depending on the age at which that would have happened to someone, whatever it is, it might seem quite minor. But the point is, if there was a big amount of emotion around it that had to be held in the body because there wasn't the safety around, or there wasn't an adult there holding the person so they could express it, it's still there waiting to be met. So I work with all of those. And the other thing would be about intergenerational trauma. So most of us have got family members up the generations who have lived through wars or famine or, some big experience, and each generation will bite off and what they can chew, and what they cannot deal with will pass down to the next generation. And of course, over time, that massive incident that might have happened, so let's say it's a war, it will have created all sorts of behavioural changes in that person who experienced it. When it drips down to the next generation, the behaviour's there, but not the incident. And likely alongside the behaviour will be whatever that person has had to do to adapt their breath, how they hold themselves. So in a sense, it's like the emotion, if it can't fully be met, moves down, but we get more and more distant from the original wound, and so it becomes much more difficult to grab hold of, to really know what we're working with. So it can become anxiety, but with nothing that it attaches to, because it's actually come down the family lines.
Yeah, so there's not the information there, but there is actual a physical thing going on that you've inherited, not just your blue eyes or your whatever, but actually inherited those in the body somehow, in the DNA.
Exactly.
So, and there's no information for it. So I suppose it's is it about helping people to, because you don't have to then, especially if it's intergenerational, relive a trauma or know what that trauma is, but it's about allowing your body to safely feel those things. Is that
Exactly, yeah. So you don't need a story. Sometimes the story is important, but oftentimes really what we're trying to get to is the feeling and letting go of any need to try and put a frame around what it is. So really to go into the emotion. And what people discover is when they go into the emotion, then it can pass and something else can rise up. So in a way, we become a little bit unstuck in a good way. So, you know, if that's been holding there and we've had to contract our bodies around it, so things get tightened, by bringing the breath in and feeling the emotion, something can expand and release. And that is an exciting development. We don't know how that's going to impact upon a person when we're doing the work, but just the fact of giving it attention, allowing something to be expressed, and creating space means something new can come in.
I'm lucky enough to have experienced some of that with you, Susie, and it is life-changing.